Excuse me. When I first started collecting pens at flea markets and garage sales, oh dear, 40 years ago or more. How old am I now? 67. Yeah, more than 40 years ago. I started buying only pens that had flexible nibs. I would pass up on the blue duofold. No, I didn't pass up on the blue duofold. I bought a blue duofold senior for $1, even though I didn't like the nib. But I got it home, figured out how to put a sack in it. Who knew that the section unscrewed? I didn't. The interweb didn't exist back then, but somehow I managed, after trying to pull it out, I got the crazy idea to unscrew it, and it unscrewed, and I thought, oh my God, this is interesting. So one of the first things I did was I yanked the Parker duofold senior nib out of its little section, and I put into it a nice Waterman number 6 nib that was very flexible, or whatever. I don't remember what it was. Some Waterman 100-year pen, maybe. So anyway, I had a beautiful pen, big blue duofold senior in lapis lazuli, and a nib that was really fun to draw with, and to do calligraphy with. Yes, there's a little spot in hell for me to be put because I did that, but I'm happy to be there, because I made the pen usable. I didn't ruin the pen or the nib by doing that. I think they have now been replaced. With all of my 40 years of buying and selling pens, I have found a flexible Parker duofold senior nib, and it is now residing in that Parker blue duofold senior. The original nib that it had might be somewhere. I don't know, probably sold it in years past. So plopping in a nib that fits and that works, taking it out of a wall Eversharp and putting it into a Waterman, I don't consider that a horrible sin for someone who's using the pens. If they like the way this one looks and likes the nib on that other one, if you can make them play together, why not? It's a Frankenpen, yes, I know that. The term Frankenpen, by the way, was not coined by me, but it was coined by a friend of mine who years and years and years before anyone else was using that term, he called me up and he said, "How's my Frankenpen doing?" And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But he explained to me, it's the pen you're trying to put that Victorian dip nib in. Have you found a dip nib for me? And so anyway, that term was coined, and I wear it, use it with pride. So here is my newest Frankenpen, and it's going to get in my suitcase and go to California, where I think it may end up in the hands of Dr. C, if he likes it. If he doesn't like it, I'm very happy to keep it. The Frankenpen in this case, you need three things. You need 3 pens to make a Frankenpen. You need a barrel and cap and section. You need a feed that doesn't belong in this pen, and you need a Victorian dip pen nib. And Any other, if you used the original feed that came with this nib, this pen, with a Victorian dip nib, you're going to break the nib. Victorian dip pen nibs in cross section are flat on top. They're not rounded. They're flat and down. And why they were built that way, I don't know, but that's the way they were built. And someone can explain that to you better than I can. But what I have to do in order to make a pen work, and I'm saying hello to someone that's watching me live here. Hello. What I have to do, here's the section, looking into the section. Here's the hole that the feed would go in. Normally, the feed is a round feed that fits in a round hole. Is there a way I can make this work? And the nib is a part of a circle in cross section, rounded circle, and that fits perfectly fine in there. Well, if you fit this nib in there, you're going to crack it right there because you're bending it to fit in this. You're putting a square peg in a round hole. So what I do is I'll find a feed that is a little bit smaller than the feed that was originally in it. And if I took the nib out of this pen and shook like this, the feed would fall out. Normally a feed would not fall out if you did that because it's pretty tight. But what I can do here is the flatter top, it's still held together by friction, and sometimes it's pretty tight, but I'm not distorting the nib by doing this, at least not too much anyway. So what you have is this beautiful nib that's very flexible in a barrel that was missing a nib, and it's missing a clip as well. It's an Eagle Pen Company pen. These oversized pens are sometimes good for these Frankenpen pens, often because some oversized nibs had steel nibs, and a steel nib is fatter, thicker than a gold nib. So sometimes if you take the steel nib out and all of the rusty bits that come out with it, that feed can hold a Victorian nib without deforming it. So anyway, so here is the pen ready to go. Another thing that in making a Frankenpen with a Victorian nib is you really have to be careful about the point of the nib hitting the top of the cap. So I carefully measure it to make sure that the inner cap and the top of the cap, there's enough space, a length to the inner cap so that this doesn't happen. A good pen to use for Frankenpens are things like this. This is one of those really fugly pens that were made by unscrupulous pen makers to try to imitate the style of a Waterman Repoussé pen, and they are really crappy, but what they have is a perfectly good section, perfectly good barrel, ignore the ugliness on it, a feed, and you can there's no inner cap, and these often have enough length between the top of the pen and the how it seats on this thing, so you don't end up breaking the top of the pen nib. I have a drawer full of pens like this that are set to hold Victorian dip pen nibs. Their bodies, it's like the Frankenstein, it was finding the brain is the hard part, the abnormal brain. This is the harder part and the expensive part to find. The rest of it is pretty cheap. This is one that I bought at the Philly show. I can't remember now if it had a nib in it. It's a Lincoln pen, hard rubber pen, beautiful pen. I think it did have a warranted nib that I didn't like, so I yanked it out thinking I'd put one of these in it. And I was all set to do that, but I just couldn't find a feed that fit into that hole that fit with this nib. So I found this instead. What did I do with, where did this nib come from? This is a Waterman 100-year pen or emblem pen or something, some Waterman pen of some sort or other. And I put that one in here. So this pen would have had a warranted nib. I don't think they ever made a pen that said Lincoln nib. But this is a nice, really nice pen. I may bring this to California with me. But I'll probably just keep it. And maybe I'll find a nib like this to go in it. Okay, part 2. I do put a sack in these pens, but I don't fill them. Because of the very long nib and the fact that I'm making these beautiful long calligraphic lines, when I'm using these for addressing envelopes and stuff, I will always just dip them, and one dip will have enough ink in it for the entire envelope, from Mr. and Mrs. to the zip code. I don't have to dip it again. If I kept this nib in the original mother of pearl holder, I'd have to dip it maybe every 2 or 3 letters before it would run out of ink. So why do I put a sack on the pen? Well, I put a sack on the pen in the same way that if it wasn't there and there was this big gob of ink on the feed, there's no, is it surface tension? What is it when you put your hand on a straw, you put it in your Coca-Cola and you lift it out and there's Coke in the straw? And then you do this with your finger and then it all falls out. Whatever that is, whatever that law of physics is, you need that here too. So I put a sack on it just so it's airtight in the back. You can fill it if you want to. There are some people that I know that do fill their Frankenpens with dip nibs like this. But for me, I guess I've done it a few times. I'd have to write slower than I want to write. But anyway, so I'm going to put a sack in this pen, bring it to California. I'm going to show this to Dr. C. If he wants to buy it, he can. If he doesn't want to buy it, I'm happy to keep it. If someone else at the show wants to buy it, I can explain to them what I'm telling you now. The limitations of this pen are evident. I've just explained to you what the limitations are. But they're really, really great pens. I use them for calligraphy. I don't use them for drawing. I use them at my desk. I don't carry them around with me. I have a feeling that Dr. C probably will uses his pens at home. He might bring 1 or 2 pens with him when he goes out to work, or if he's going to lunch, he might bring a pen. Dr. C and I share something in common. if there's a piece of paper anywhere near us, we will cover it with lettering and writing and drawings and doodles. We'll just, there's no piece of paper is safe. It doesn't even have to be a blank piece of paper. He sent me samples of his writing, and I was looking through them and turned one of the pages over, and it was his tax returns from last year. I tried not to pay too much attention to it. I just noticed that that's what they were, and I thought, well, I better not pry into his finances. So what I'm going to ask him to do, I'm going to ask him to promise to use this pen at his desk and not let it ever leave his desk or leave the house at any rate. And I'm going to tell him, this is how I use these pens. I dip them and I write, and I dip them and I write. And I can write up, if I'm writing a letter with my normal handwriting, I might be able to get a page without having to dip it again. If I'm doing calligraphy where I'm pressing down a lot and getting a big shaded line like this, I might have to dip it once per envelope. But they are fascinating pens. For him, or for you, and you and you and you might be able to get 99% of what this pen offers in a regular fountain pen nib. The thing about these pens that 99.9% of fountain pens don't have is this, what I call a return. When you go from thick to thin, these vintage pens, these Victorian nibs, for some reason, maybe it's the shape they have, maybe it's, I don't know what the magic is, but they snap right back to zero, and the line they make goes right back to the finest line. There's no sluggishness. And I think modern fountain pens also snap back immediately, but there's something about the shape of the nib that has this residual ink on the nib that makes for a slow return, I'll call it, rather than a snappy return. So that little tiny thing, again, I'm going to show you with a big illustration what I'm talking about. This pen I'm bringing to sell, it's not a Frankenpen, it's a Mavage. It has the wrong, the pattern is not the same on the cap and the barrel. Maybe I can find a cap that matches the barrel, swap it out if I can. But anyway, so we have the downstroke and the upstroke. Going from 0 to 60, doing this, many fountain pens do this very easily. You press down and it gets wide. It's when you go up, when you lift up on the pen, this right here is where the sluggishness happens. So in a dip nib, this thing, as soon as I lift up on the pen, it goes back to thin, and the ink deposit on the page immediately stops. With a fountain pen, even if it's a flexible, fine fountain pen, it does something like this. There's that little extra bit of ink that fills in that space. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. It's just this, when this snaps back, it's just so pleasant to experience writing, and I think it looks really nice when it does that. This, in my mind, sometimes looks sloppy, only because I'm used to this. If I never tried one of these pens, I'd think this, what I called sloppy just now, would be just perfectly fine. And there's nothing wrong with it, really. It's just that these vintage nibs, these Victorian nibs from 1880, 1890, snap back in such a way that, and the nib is shaped in such a way that it goes back to zero immediately. And that's really fun. So this pen, Dr. C, can be yours. It might be nice to have one of these. I did mention when I saw the writing he does, I think he tends to like to press on the gas on his pens when he writes. He likes, I think, he likes going fast. He likes making a big, bold line. And I think that maybe the fine lines, which is what this sort of offers, he may not like in the long run. In the, if he had this pen and a Waterman, I mean, a nice typical Waterman #2 flexible nib, and he had both of these for a month, and he was playing with them, I have a feeling he would be happier with the other one. But, and he can even borrow this for a while if he wants to, and send it back if he decides he doesn't want to buy it. I'm happy to get it back. Happy to keep it. I think this is a pen for a calligrapher, not a regular writer. So anyway, there's that. Okay, so what else can I tell you? So, Mr. K, you're here still? Who's in the room? Say hello to me, people. Maybe I'll invite one of you in. One of the things that Dr. C has done was he's going to be at the hotel on Thursday, and I'm not going to be there till Friday, and there are pen people going to be there on Thursday night, and he wanted to invite some of the people that I introduced him to have dinner with him. He and his wife wanted to invite these people to have dinner, and I said that was very kind of him to offer that. I'm sure that under normal circumstances, they'd be very happy to be taken to dinner or to go to dinner. But my experience of pen shows is anyone new walking through the revolving doors of the hotel into the lobby that is a pen collector that people know, chances are half the people in the room have some sort of business to conduct, or they want to, did you bring that pen for me? Or what do you have new that I want to buy? Or whatever it is. So it's a sort of a feeding frenzy. The first day of a show, people are excited about wanting to get stuff. And hey, Friedrich, Would you like to join me, Friedrich? Do you have pants on? We can talk about what it's like. I was just mentioning the feeding frenzy of a pen show and how someone walks through the revolving doors in the lobby and suddenly it's like they are a prime piece of wildebeest and everyone else in the lobby are, uh, what are those birds that eat dead people, dead things, scavengers? What's the ravens? Not ravens. What are they called? Vultures. Vultures. You're naked in bed. Oh dear. Well, can you just aim the camera at the ceiling and then we can talk about this? Because I think you've been to pen shows enough to know the feeding frenzy and the uh God. He just said pen shows are worse than a 20-year-old boy at a gay bar. That is that's one way to put it. Um, part of it is uh, they're not interested in the pen collector. That's the difference. They don't care about the guy that has the suitcase full of pens. They want the pens. They don't care about the pen collector. Uh, so that is the difference. But they immediately connect up with people, and they want to make contact with this person, and they want to be first in line to look at his junk, as it were. So, and I meant by junk, I mean pens, not what other people mean by the word junk. I'll get you on board in a second, Friedrich. I'm just going to finish my comment here. Another thing about having dinner, if I'm by myself, having dinner all by myself, I'll just show you what it looked like last night. I'll just show you what it looks like. What does it look like last night? Here I'm sitting at the bar. Here are the bar stools. Here's me. Here's the bar stools. Here's my piece of paper. Here's my pen. Here's my beer. Soon there's another piece of paper here and another piece of paper there and another piece and another pen and another pen and another beer. And I take up a lot of room when I'm playing with pens. And then you're sitting at a round table at dinner at a pen show and you've got 4 people. Suddenly there's no table space for the plates that of food that are being brought to you, and of course no one remembers what they ordered, and the waiters just want to kill us. So I'm a waiter. I try to be nice. I try to remember what people ordered so I can point to the person, but the waiter is holding this hot plate full of, you know, food, whatever the food is, and they're trying to put it down, not to bump into the pens, not to, and we're completely oblivious to the waiter. So it's not a pretty sight. Okay, so Friedrich, we're going to talk about pen show fun for someone that's never been to a pen show. And it is fun. It's a heck of a lot of fun. But at a pen show, people forget to eat. They're at the show all day long. They get set up at 8 in the morning and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then someone says, well, we need some lunch. Okay, well, that was 4 hours ago. You were supposed to have lunch. What's wrong with you people? So, it is an interesting thing. Dr. C had invited my host that I'm staying with in Ventura and I to have dinner with him, but I said that I couldn't do it on Thursday night because I'm going to be on the other way on the other side of LA, and driving. I wanted to spend as few hours in a car as possible while I'm in LA, and driving an hour and a half to have dinner and an hour and a half to come back was a little much for my host um, that I'm staying with. Here's Friedrich. Okay, Friedrich, add to stream, add to stage. It is a interesting thing. Dr. C had invited my host that I'm staying with in Ventura and Friedrich, I to have dinner with him, but I said that I couldn't do it on Thursday night because I'm going to be on the other way on the other side of LA, and driving. I wanted to spend as few hours in a car as possible while I'm in LA, and driving an hour and a half to have dinner and an hour and a half to come back was a little much for my host that I'm staying with. Here's Friedrich. Okay, Friedrich, add to stream, add to stage. It is a interesting. Friedrich. Dr. C had invited my host that I'm staying with in Ventura and Friedrich, I to have dinner with him. I said that you two couldn't do it on Thursday night because I'm going to be on the other way on the other side of LA, and driving. I wanted to spend as few hours in a car as possible while I'm in LA. And Friedrich, I just muted the sound from you. I'm getting an echo from you. You have to turn off the YouTube thing and just stream through StreamYard.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Okay, great. So I'm just trying now to move back so I can see people's comments. If I don't know what happened here. How can I go back? Oh, sorry. Look. There we go. There, now I can see. So, Friedrich, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, Friedrich, could I have you introduce yourself?
Howdy, everyone. I'm not sure who's here.
Well, other people will be watching this later, including this person named Dr. C, who is never been to a pet show before. So I'm trying to give him as good an introduction to it. So what advice would you have to someone that's never been to a pen show before?
Set a budget.
Set a budget? Okay, so
definitely set a budget, and then realize you're going to break it.
Okay, good.
Guaranteed. Probably not as much as it used to be, but I would advise on cash. That definitely helps. A lot of vendors prefer cash.
Yeah.
And are more apt to cut you a better break with cash than if you're going to whip out plastic. But a lot of the larger dealers, they'll take plastic, they'll take PayPal, Venmo, all the other stuff now. Now, a lot of the shows anymore, the larger shows, they all charge sales tax now too.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah, be prepared for it. I know LA charges sales tax. Chicago charges sales tax at the show. I think San Francisco does as well. And it's not just the dealers doing it. The event itself forces the participants to charge sales tax. I don't know how they're handling that.
Okay. That's interesting to know. So in addition to your cash, if that's what you're bringing, bring a bunch of change. Bring a lot of small bills and quarters and nickels.
Right. Just to annoy somebody, so you could, a couple rolls of quarters like you're going to the laundromat,
Nathan Tardif would he would drive me absolutely mental. He would get like $2,000 worth of $2 bills just to piss everyone off. And Susan B. Anthony dollars.
Susan B. Anthony's Franklin $50. Yeah.
No, he would just do that just to annoy us. And but so that's interesting to know. I'll have to plan on bringing lots of $1 bills. I'll probably just say keep the change. I mean, I'm not gonna
or just factor it into whatever you put on your tag, and then just say that the sales tax is included. That's what a lot of the smaller dealers were doing in Chicago.
Okay. So tax included. Okay, it's $20 tax included. Then you and your accountant
can figure it out later.
Can decide what the actual sale price was.
Right. And I would say definitely wear comfortable clothing and shoes.
And bring a loop. Bring your own loop. Bring your own ink. Most people have inks, but bring the ink you like.
Bring the ink you like. Bring the paper you like.
Very important to bring the paper you like.
Do not bring a backpack. Please do not bring. Yeah. I know a lot of people think, oh, that'll be great, or a big shopping bag or something.
Yeah.
No. The aisles are so crowded and narrow, and you'd think pen people are friendly, but not when they're in a feeding frenzy over worried about who's getting the next trefoil pattern Waterman at the table over that they think they're going to save $5.
Yeah,
they'll run you over.
Yeah,
whether you got a walker with you or
yes.
or not, they don't care.
That's very true. Another thing about pen, I'm doing a cross section now of a typical pen show. This is the floor. Here's the V-shaped 21-year-old from the gay bar.
There we go. Yes.
Okay, so that's not what pen people look like.
He's just walked in the door. Yeah.
Pen people tend to be pear-shaped.
That's right.
But you have a table here and a table here. And this pear-shaped pen person is going to lean over the table like this, looking at a pen through their loop. And someone is over here leaning over the pen this table with their hindquarters. And then you've got this, Khyber Pass that you have to walk through. So
and no matter how politely you go, excuse me, and try to shuffle sideways.
Yeah. It'll be easier for you to go all the way around to the end of the table, end of the row, and come back. Ignore the Panama Canal. Go.
That's right.
Go the long way around the Cape of Good Hope.
You'll save more time doing it that way because you'll never get through.
You'll never get through. Now, Susan Worth, our dear friend Susan Worth, and your host Pierre Gustafson, and two other people in the pen community, the Esterbrook Pen Company people. They might be the only ones that do it. We raise our table up, a foot and a half, so it's at counter height. It's the same height that you are at the jeweler's looking at your wedding ring, or the pen shop trying out a pen. We raise it up so people don't have to do this. The other thing is your posture at the end of the day and your back is going to hurt horribly. Because you're bending over so much. Now, some people, they kneel on the floor. I do that, or I sit in a chair, which sometimes you can do.
Yeah. Sometimes Linda Kennedy or others will have chairs if the aisle's large enough. Or if the aisle is large enough,
you can do a chair. But there is, don't bring a backpack, don't bring a shopping bag. Wear one of those fishing vests with all the pockets.
Yeah.
or a bandolier. You can put the pens in your bandolier.
Yeah.
If you want to do
Or
that.
you could get one of those smaller like man purses, as long
Yeah.
as it's small. But
A purse, yes. Bring a
yeah,
purse with you.
yeah. But nothing overly large, because it'll end up, battering everybody to death before you get down the first aisle.
Yes. Yes. 6 people were killed yesterday at
Yeah.
the pen show because they were battered to death.
Yes.
Okay. Another thing. What about? Are you someone who will walk around the room before you actually buy anything, or do you, with the first time you see a pen that you want, you buy it, or do you do the shopping?
It depends on what it is.
Yes. A Waterman 52 with a nice nib, you can ignore that one.
Yeah, I can ignore that one
because it'll be around.
because there'll be 10 or 15, 20 more of them. But if it's something specific that
a 472 in Sheraton,
then
you better buy that, because it's the only one that's going to be there.
Right. And I better be shopping on the Thursday or Friday before the other dealers, because somebody will buy it and then turn around and put it on their dealer table and double the price.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But even doubling the price or adding
even
$20
still,
or 20%, it's still a rare
it's still
pen.
It's still worth it. Yeah.
You still want to buy it for yourself.
Yeah.
But for someone who's beginning, has never been to a pen show, that's only interested in pens to draw with or write with or do calligraphy with, if they're buying a pen for a tool, you might as well just show up on Sunday.
Yeah, that would actually be the best for them, because they'll get the best price.
And because I've been trying to sell this pen for 2 days, no one wants it. I'm happy to get rid of it for, take half off or 30% off or whatever, because
or they'll be more patient for them to have 5 or 10 minutes to go. Yeah, people have dipped it all weekend long, or go ahead and dip it. I got to clean it anyway.
Yeah,
because I'm cleaning these others. So they're more apt to give you a chance at testing,
and they're happy to talk to you. The first day of a pen show, the first real day of a pen show, when people finally, unpack their suitcases and dump everything down, it's pretty much I don't think any dealer is entirely focused on selling.
Oh, hi, Osney.
Because they're focused on buying. They're still, even if they're sitting in their chair behind their table, they're looking over at Mr. X who's unpacking, and they're waiting, for him to unzip that zipper, and then they'll run over.
Or they'll get up in the middle of talking to you because they see somebody enter the room that they know might have something they want, and they'll walk away.
They'll walk right away.
Yep.
Yeah. Polite. Goof. We all turn from gallant into goofuses.
Yes, instantly. Yes.
We ignore polite conversation. We ignore pleases and thank yous. It's just, get out of my way.
Yeah.
It's
like my shiny object.
Yeah. Me and my walker and my Merce are going to go. I'm surprised we don't just jump over the tables. So again, if you're buying a pen as a tool, showing up on the last day is perfectly fine. Now, this doctor that has never been to a pen show that I'm bringing pens for, he cannot be there on Saturday. He's going to be there on Thursday night, staying overnight at the hotel. I have Todd Merrill and Nicola Pang.
Well, that'll be an excellent indoctrination for him.
lined up to help him, because Nicola is a calligrapher.
Yes.
And Todd Merrill as well is very much a pen user, and I think Todd and Dr. C are very akin to how they like to use pens. Todd Merrill is a swashbuckler.
Without
The
doubt.
way
Yes.
he
Errol Flynn
handles
of the
his
pen.
the
Yes.
Errol Flynn of the pen,
Yeah.
and Doctor C is not so much a swashbuckler, I don't think, but he's a changing the metaphor here. He's one of those barnstorming pilots that he likes to write
Okay.
really, really big, and so he uses the whole page to write a letter, a word. I mean, not so much a letter, but so I think that they're both akin to one another. So but anyway, this doctor has to spend Saturday with his daughter who's getting married. They're going to deal with venues for the wedding or menus for the meal or whatever it is. So, but I said, if you can, come back on Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm going to help him as best I can on Friday, even though I'm going to be just as distracted as any other.
You'll be in vulture mode as well. Yeah.
I'll be in vulture mode, and but for me, I don't really. I'm such a bottom feeder still. I mean, I don't need. It would be great to find a cardinal overlay Waterman. I'd never owned one. I'd love to buy one, and I know I can buy one at the pen show. I just have to spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's my problem too. There's a lot of things I want. It's just justification sometimes.
You know.
Yeah.
So, but I'm, at the Philadelphia Pen Show, there was the Fountain Pen Hospital people were selling Gary Lehrer's stuff. Now, the year before, the Gary Lehr stuff was all, the Waterman 13 with the Stanhope in it. I already have one of those, so I don't need two. I don't need to
Right.
make a pair of earrings out of them. But but they, all the pearl slabbed Parkers and the Watermans and the 404s and the 402s. I knew I didn't want any of those things, even if it was something I could afford. It's not my
Right.
taste.
Right.
But what they had this year, and I was late at the table. They had things like this, the gold fill wall number 2 pens and the sterling overlay Watermans with the wrong clip, with a nickel
Yeah.
clip rather than a sterling clip. That doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
happy.
That's ideal, actually. I mean,
And I was able to buy them. They were priced fairly for a collector. They were priced greatly for me because I didn't care about that. So I missed out on a lot of those pens. I did get a flexible nibbed, medium sized Schaefer balance pen, pearl and black pen,
oh, excellent.
and I've subsequently sold it to a pen collector here. I really wanted to keep it, but it was on my desk and he liked it, so I said, "Okay, you can buy it from me." But there are those things that were at that table. I missed out on, I'm sure, a lot because I didn't even think. I thought they all were going to be hundreds of dollars each,
Right.
and they were tens of dollars each. There were some that were 100 and
Well,
150, but
that'll be the last hurrah for Fountain Pen Hospital anyway, because they got bought out.
Yeah, I know that. I don't know what the brothers are going to do, whether they still are willing to buy and sell collections, because I think they still like the idea of doing this. They just don't have a brick and mortar store anymore.
Well, hopefully they continue that aspect, because people that bought them out, unfortunately, are the pariahs of the fucking fountain pen industry.
Oh dear.
So,
And you know that Applebee's, Apple Bloom, closed their Boston store. So,
yeah,
which is too bad.
yeah.
We don't have a pen store in Boston anymore, other than me, I guess, if you call me a pen store. So it's
Mello, I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't have to be a number 4 wall, because you could have 2 different sizes in the number 4 wall. You could have the long number 4 wall, or you could have the short and fat number 4 wall. But any wall metal pin is great for a starter because
And it's great for an adult too.
yeah,
I'm very happy
it,
with a wall number 2.
walls are great because they fight back.
Yep. There's a little bit
And
of a, yeah, they Watermans are kind of the wimps of the
yes,
of the nib, other than Moors. Of course, Moors just break.
yeah,
They're not good. But Watermans are a little. There's no fight there. A Schaefer flexible nib is even tougher than a wall.
yeah,
But
yeah. I Schaefers are, as far as flexible nibs, when you can get a Schaefer, as far as I'm concerned, that's perfection for what I like in a flexible nib. It's going to fight you all the way, but the return and the snapback is it's back to a dime.
yeah, it wants to be. It has all the DNA of a firm pen, and it wants to go right back to that. Whereas a Waterman, even a rigid Waterman, its DNA is flexible. It can't help but be somewhat flexible.
Right, right.
And a Schaefer pen can't help but be firm. Walls, they were, whenever I would go to a pen show or a flea market and I'd see a Skyline, taking off the cap, it was a crapshoot. I would never know what was under there. With a Waterman, it's almost always flexible. With a Schaefer, it's almost always firm. With a wall, they were all over the map.
Yeah,
Which is what's kind of fun about them too, because and all the nibs they made were good. I think there was never
yeah.
a
And the
quality
nice part
control.
is Wall in their lifetime, they never got into like Parker did with any of the electro welding of the nib points or all that. They always did the hand tipping and all that. So every single Wall nib's going to have its own character. It's not going to get like the later Parker ones where almost all the mediums are pretty much, after the earlier 51s and they started electro tipping, there's no character to them. A
Mhm.
medium's a medium's a medium's a medium's a medium.
Yeah.
You know, they're all Johnny One notes at that point.
Or sometimes 2 notes.
Yeah, yeah,
Here's a Parker 51 special. I'm bringing this to California just because it's something I can carry with me, and if I lose it, I'm not going to completely die.
yeah. Nobody panics. Yeah,
But what it has this big, loud Johnny One note here on the front side, the regular side, but it has this excruciatingly fine, lovely fine when you flip it upside down. So it's sort of a Johnny Two note
which
routine.
works when you have regular crappy paper. Yeah.
Which, and I mean, any pen will do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, Minimal Scholar. Do you know him on Instagram?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen him in a long time though.
He just posted a pen that he had ground in such a way, the nib where it writes fat upside down and thin right side up. And I thought, well, why the hell are you doing that?
Yeah, that's counterproductive. I mean, you just all the regular nibs come opposite of that to begin with. You didn't have to grind anything. I mean,
But for some reason he did it, and he has this logic of how he writes, and I don't think he's someone who necessarily applies pressure at
no,
all. He's a
no.
one pressure kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, but when you do have a pen, whenever you turn the pen upside down and you're writing with it, you're pushing the tines together.
Yes.
Even to the tiniest little, even the weight of the pen will do that. So you're restricting the flow when you do that. So that would seem to be the logical spot for the fine to happen. When you flip it over and you do apply pressure, the fat gets even fatter.
Yeah.
If it's
To me, I would think doing the opposite, like he had a ground, it would become ink starved, especially if you're really wanting it to be broad.
Yeah, I would think so too. It would, if you're applying any pressure whatsoever, it's going to push those things together. And So, what other advice do we have?
Definitely bring bottled water. Bring yourself some, bring yourself some aspirin, or something like that. I mean,
And power bars, you're going to forget
a
to have
power
lunch.
a
You're going to
power
forget
bar, or a fruit roll up, something, a handful of granola, trail mix, whatever.
peanuts. Yeah, just
Peanuts.
because
Because
people will forget to eat. People forget
yes.
to eat, and then he wanted to invite some pen people out for dinner on Thursday night, and at a fancy restaurant. Yeah,
Okay.
and I told him, I said, that's not a good idea. I mean, it's very kind of him to do that.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just,
thoughtful. Yeah, yeah.
as long as you don't have to actually eat while you're at dinner. or,
Right.
or
Yeah, yeah. You'll never get past the appetizers, if you're lucky. I mean, the
because the
food the
waiter
food may the food may get ordered and it may arrive, but it won't get eaten. It'll
because
get cold. People will end up taking it home in a foam box because it never got on the table itself. It sat on some cart next to the table because nobody wanted to put their Parker pens away that they just bought 2 hours before, and couldn't leave in the car, even though the 5 people at the table had already seen the same 10 pens
they
40
keep
times before they got into the dining
restaurant.
establishment. Yeah.
It's show and tell and bragging rights and talking about the pen you bought on eBay or the whatever it was, the fish
Yes.
that got away, all of this stuff. Eating food is not on the agenda.
Now,
Even
now
if
it, it, it only counts if you're at Pen Show After Dark in the bar area and you're like me and you buy a bunch of pens that are new old stock and they're still in the glassine wrap with stickers and price tags, and you go into the bar, you take all that shit off of it and you start writing with them just to piss people off that it's going to irritate, because
oh,
they're going to
I
get
should
rooster mad.
I should print up a bunch of original price stickers on my Epson
You
printer
should.
and
You
and
should.
just tear them
Just
off.
start tearing them off. Yeah, 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 yeah. Nello, I do that. I actually
There'll
do
be
that
a
all the
nine.
time
There'll
at,
be a
at shows.
911. There'll be a 911 call, and
Yes.
the SWAT team will show up, and they're going to say, "Well, what sort of domestic abuse are you talking about, sir? He's putting ink in his never before inked pen."
He 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 he, he opened that Waterman box and he took the pens out of their wrapper. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's using it. Yeah.
Anyway, so other
Did
than
he
that,
steal
okay.
the pens, sir? No. He bought them. Okay, there's no disturbance here. Yeah.
Yes, yes. There's nothing to see here.
Yes.
There's
Yeah, there
nothing to
are
see
there
here.
are some serious. You will that might be something to let Dr. C know of. There
What?
are some people he might encounter at the show that are vehemently opposed to actually using
Yeah,
pens.
yeah, yeah. It will, but most of the dealers now know that there are so many people out there loving to use these things and are journaling and they're using different color inks and all of the stuff that I don't find at all interesting. I don't, you know, Waterman Black, that's all I need in my life. Not quite, but I'm happy with
Yeah, yeah,
what.
good half dozen decent colors, and I'm all right. I mean, I like all the different ones, and I even like some of Nathan's inks.
Yeah,
Even though they take a while to dry sometimes.
yeah.
But I don't need anything with glitter or shimmer or half the stuff Marilyn uses. I just
Yes,
that scares the Jesus out.
it works for Marilyn, and Marilyn complained. She posted about lever filling pens with rubber sacks in them. I can see why she doesn't like them because she changes inks, in mid sentence.
Well, yeah, you could never get the damn thing clean either with
No,
what she uses half the time. I
no,
mean, you'd have
no.
to put a new sack in,
Uh,
every other day.
yeah. So So, but anyway, back, other than the concern about that, what other advice for uh, what other advice might we have for, okay, bring
Try before you buy.
try before you buy. Yeah, that's
Definitely. Yeah.
look at things under the loop.
Yes.
There's uh, remember Jeff Berliner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He would always come up to me and he'd pick up a pen. He said, "What's wrong with
What's
this
wrong
pen?"
with this?
Yes, he would always say, "What's wrong? What's wrong with this?"
What's
'Cause-
wrong with this? What? Why are you selling it? What's wrong with this? Yeah.
yeah, and part of it was he didn't have time to look. He was too busy buying things, so he wanted me to tell him the truth and say, "Well, there's a hairline crack over here, or it has the
Right.
wrong nib, or the
Yeah.
feed has been repaired, or
Or it
whatever."
needs a sack, or
Or it
the
needs a
clip's
set.
bent, or
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and but I always loved that though. What's wrong with this pen?
yeah,
The fact that it's in your hands, Jeff.
yeah, yeah. Right. I ain't got the time to tell you because
Yeah,
I haven't looked at all these pens that detailed to go. Here's the
yeah.
litany of things you want to know. Yeah,
And some people do not know. They haven't seen the pens in a year or in a month, and maybe they just bought it at the pen show the time before. They haven't had time to fix it. So it's perfectly good to ask, not so much
yes,
what's wrong with it. Word it differently. You said, "Is this pen repaired? Is it ready? If I were to buy it, can I fill it with ink?" Most people will say whether it is or not, truthfully.
right,
Um, and they can prove it by actually filling it right there for you. And they should show you how it fills if you've never filled a pen before. Um, but they may not know that there's a hairline crack, somewhere.
yeah.
So it's really up to you to look at them. And many of
And
us,
and as an advice, if somebody says it's restored and they're wanting a premium on it, make sure it's, restored. There shouldn't be a scratch, a nick, or whatever. If they're
well, I
charging
mean,
restored prices,
a restored pen can have a crack or rather a nick and a ding. I mean, I don't mind. Uh, I mean, it's not
well,
like
I differentiate between repaired
in
and
restored.
restored.
Yeah.
If it's repaired and working, that's one thing. But if they're charging a premium, like, hey, I want $400 for this pen because it's been gone through with a fine tooth comb, it's
Yeah.
been micro gloss polished and all that, well then it all better have all the boxes done. But if all
Yeah.
they've done is stick
Put
a
a
rubber
sack in it.
sack in it,
Yeah.
well then no, they can't call that quote unquote restored.
Yeah.
You've just repaired or resacked the pen. It is
Yeah.
working, it's functioning,
Yeah.
but it's not restored.
It's like buying a car at the used car lot.
Right.
If you want it restored, that rip in the passenger seat has to be repaired with
Right.
the original leather or whatever.
Yeah.
Or not that, if not that. But you should point out the flaws that it has, or replacement parts. If it is in fact you're selling it as restored, you should say that this clip is not original. It's been cast by, or whatever. I don't know, whatever they say, whatever you'd have to say to make it be
Yeah.
restored.
I
I'm a
agree.
repairer. I'm not a restorer, as you
I
know.
I do agree with you, Nello. That does have an effect on whether the pen truly works well or doesn't.
To fill, I mean, rather than just dipping it.
Correct.
Yeah.
But that also has an effect too on the humidity.
Yeah.
Also has an effect on the altitude.
Yeah.
On the paper, on your own hand heat and body temperature. There are so many factors that go into it. That's why a Noto, when they brought out their pens originally, the whole idea behind the shutoff on the plunger filler, and later on the Japanese copied the shutoff off the Inoto plunger filler for their eyedroppers was to control ink flow variations in humid environments and through altitude. So there's better ways to control burping and various other things, but they might let you dip it, but they're not. Most pen shows really won't let you, fill the pen per se. Some might,
some
if
might
you
let
really,
you,
really know the dealer.
Normally, though, by dipping a pen, you are able to see whether the nib is to your taste. You can find out if it's flexible enough, or it's too scratchy, or it's broad enough, or it makes a line that you want to have it make. The flow is the thing that chances are, when you fill it and take it home and use it, it's going to be perfectly fine. It may write a little bit wetter if you dip it at the pen show. It's, there's a gob of ink right there at the front. There's no feeding that has to happen. It's right there. So it might write a little bit wetter. So maybe what you could do, if you're just dipping it, you put it in the ink, then you bring your little tissue and sort of dry off as much of the ink you can see, and then write with it. That might give you a better sense,
of what the flow would be.
As long as you don't, suck all the ink off, into your napkin.
And a lot of people forget too, with restored and repaired pens, or pens that have sat for a long time too, ebonite feeds have to rework and re-wet themselves. So when you refill the pen, you have to let it set for a while. If that ebonite feed's been dry for a long time, otherwise the flow will never be right. And sometimes people forget that when they get a pen, even with the newer ones with ebonite feeds, they fill it right away, and then they're irritated that the flow isn't right. Well, this is dry and this is it. And then they start monkeying with the pens and putting it on micro mesh and polishing shit and moving stuff around. And it's like, you didn't even have a chance for the feed to wet itself.
Yeah. Fill it with ink, put it down, make yourself some lunch.
Yeah, and then come back
and then it should be fine.
It should be fine, yeah. Now with a Waterman, you might not have a problem, because usually they're wet enough that if you even remotely gesticulate a little bit, it flings ink everywhere. Same with Swan. But not every pen's like that. So
one thing too is, if you do buy a pen at a pen show and it's working, it's been repaired, if not restored, has a sack in it, you bring it home and then you fill it with your ink, even though it has some residue ink from whatever the dealer had
was in there,
or whatever the dealer had 2 shows ago, and then what he used last time and what you dipped it in. It's going to have this chemistry set issue of all these different inks getting together. So bring it home, fill it with water, empty it, get it as clean as you can, shake the water out, then fill it with your ink, the ink you want to use, just so there's no chemistry project happening there.
Make yourself some homemade pen flush, a little bit of ammonia, a little bit of water, a drop of dish soap, really clean it well. I mean,
that's something I never do, but that's obvious by looking at me.
Well, I've got inky fingers this morning too, so
so
that's true. That's true, Elf.
What did he say? Even flushing with water can affect the flow if there's residue water left in the feed.
You have to let them dry on tissue.
So but again, let's see. Dipping a pen will tell you what the nib is like. Filling a pen and maybe using it for a little bit, if the dealer will let you. The dealer. Let's say, here's my table at the pen show. I'm dealer X. I have all of these. This tray is full of pens that are $1,000 each or more. I've got these that are $100 each or more. Then I've got the junk box over here that's 3 for $25, or your choice. I like how they say that. Your choice, $10, or
Yeah.
and they're all screwed up. None of them will
Yeah.
have gold nibs. But the last thing this dealer wants to do is to spend any time with you
Over at that box.
over that box, or even over a $100 pen if you're picky.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
on Sunday it's fine, but not on
But
Friday,
not on any other day. Yeah.
because they want to sell this $5,000 pen to, not to me, not to you,
But the 5 other people that are
but
standing at that table gawking over it. Yeah.
there are people over here that will want to buy to do this, and selling this pen is going to pay for this guy's trip and his hotel room. He could sell this entire box, and it's not going to do anything other than make his luggage lighter on the way home. He's not making any money on this, so he doesn't, care really about that. But what else are people saying? You will want to ask yourself, as it doesn't perform quite as well right now, would I still want it? Well, you can ask that question, but you're asking a crystal ball to give you information that is not good. I think if it writes pretty darn good at a pen show, it'll write pretty darn good when you get it home. You just might have to, again, flush out the old ink. So
Yeah.
Oh, here's Todd Merrill. Hard rubber.
Oh, hey, Todd.
Enough. Would you like to join us, Todd, as well? You missed one of Friedrich's statements about when a new guy shows up at the pen lobby. It's like the 20-year-old boy at the gay bar. Suddenly, all of the vultures.
It's true, though. It's so true.
All of the pear-shaped old leches put down their Manhattans and, oh, can I buy you a drink? Oh, what's your name?
Yeah. You get that, and slowly they turned. I mean, the whole room. Yes.
The whole room. So, do we ever remember when we were a 20-year-old?
No.
We don't know that.
And even if I did, I would never admit to it. Yeah.
We just remember when we were 50-year-old and saw the 20-year-old. That's fresh in our memory.
That's good enough. Yes.
That works for us. I'm going to be right back. You're in charge, Mr.
All righty. I'll hold down the fort.
You hold down the fort. Answer questions of Ozzy and Osney.
So have you moved on with more pens past the walls, Nello? Or are you still hanging on to narrowing in with the walls? I haven't seen you in a while, so I knew you were pretty much into the walls for a while, so. Well, a few pens is always good. I mean, it just means they get more use than some of ours, where I go, oh, I didn't even remember I had that. Thanks for buying a fourth one of the same thing.
It is funny when we get a collection as large as our collections can be, we forget what we had. And I was having lunch with John Vale once, and we were talking about the Waterman 52X, and I had recently bought a 52X, and a 52X is a 55 sized pen with a number 2 nib in it. It's a big fat pen, but with a small nib.
It's
And
for people with it's for size queens that are cheap. Yeah.
cheap size queens. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was $1 cheaper than a 55, but it was back when $1 meant something. It and anyway, I'm showing this to John, and he said, well, I know someone that has one of those in cardinal. And I said, who? Who has one of those in red? You do. I've completely forgotten I had that pen. So I'm quite often buying. Well, I buy duplicates. I've got triplicates of things. I've got a drawer full of. Well, I'll just show you. Just a minute. Now go away. Do I need another brown
No.
51?
No.
Are you sure? Are you sure I don't need one? Why? And I was late loving 51s. I used to hate them, and now I have more 51s than any single pen model.
Mitchell was picking on me about that. He's like, well, I thought you and Pierre really used to not like 51s. I was like, well, I didn't until I figured out it's a great pen when I don't have to think.
Or it's a great pen if you want to think,
yes.
because it allows you to. You're not busy making a pretty looking
I'm not playing
G.
around. Yeah,
I'm thinking of the right word and the right adjective. It immediately makes my mind turn into a functioning brain, rather than this where I'm the pretty sparkly gold and the ooh la la line it makes. And okay, but it took me a long time to realize that.
Because he was like, I can't believe the size of your 51 collection. He's like, and they're all gray. He's like, for somebody that doesn't like 51s. I was like, but they're all different.
No. There were at least two people that, like me, hated them. I won't like them here or there. I won't like them anywhere. I won't like them.
Yep.
And one was Rob Morrison. And I said, Rob, one day you're going to wake up and you'll understand it. And he called me in the morning, like about 7 a.m. And he said, I get it. And that's all he had to say. He hung up the phone. I knew what he was talking about. Otto Yang was the same one. Otto Yang said, I'm never going to like that pen. I'm never going to like that pen. I'm never going to like that pen. I get it. I get it. I love that pen.
We need special shirts or hats now or something, We were wrong. Yeah,
we were wrong.
We were wrong. I never got it. I was never part of that. Oh, this is the best pen ever. I was like, it was just not for me. Not the cat in the hat,
Yeah.
No green eggs and ham for me. I mean,
the quintessential 51, I think, if I had a museum of 51s, it wouldn't be the mustard with the Empire cap. It wouldn't be the first year with the aluminum button. It would be the gray, dove gray aerometric fill with luster alloy cap. There's something that's so quintessentially 51 about that pen that's the one I would have in the museum. Now you might disagree with me, but
no, I could see that. I have other choices in the gray colors. I mean, I like there's like I've got a couple different rare variants, like some navy gray vacuumatics, and I've got a charcoal gray aerometric that was only made in the UK, Brazil, and Spain. And there's all kinds of
There was something though about the standard dove gray, whatever they called it, and the luster alloy cap that steamed. The ones with the gold fill cap with the fancy top, they're too fancy.
I don't like any. The only gold fill top I like is the one with the plain 7 lines. I don't even like the converging lines one. Just give me the parallel lines. No squigglies. No.
And the window pane.
Nope.
And the window. Nope.
None of that shit. No.
Empire cap.
No,
And
none of it. None of it. It's all so gauche. I mean,
yeah,
it's horrible.
yeah,
You know,
and I,
I think that was Kenneth Parker's doing, because
yeah.
I think the more, you know, baubles he could put on something, the more the ridiculous clownish he could make it, you know, he did. I think his
Todd wants to join us, so I'll let him come in a second. But let me just finish. I did have the first mustard 51 I had a Empire cap, and I looked at that pen and I knew that it was rare. I knew the cap was rare. I knew the cap was neat. I knew everything about this pen, why this was so cool, but it made me sort of car sick. The yellow and the gold and the pink gold, it was just nothing was working. And I sold the pen cap. I kept the mustard pen. I sold the cap to Peter Markman, and he put it on a black pen, and it looked perfect.
yeah,
When there was only the when there wasn't that third color getting in the way. Okay,
yeah, it balanced out. Yeah.
here's Todd Merrill to join us. Now remember, Todd, turn your YouTube off.
Well, I'll Todd have my spot.
No, no,
Oh no.
you chat for a little bit together.
Am I here? Am I visible?
Yeah, you're
You
here.
indeed are, sir.
Oh, good.
And
I don't see
and
myself on my thing, but I'm glad I'm
well,
visible. Oh, there I am. Okay, good.
you are okay. One
Hi
thing
there.
I was describing you as being a swashbuckler.
Oh dear.
Yeah, the Errol
Is that
Flynn
it?
of pen. Yeah.
Errol Flynn of fountain pen writers. I think
Oh, but
that's
it's interesting though. I never seem to get my target though. Right?
Well, Errol Flynn never really got his either, but I mean,
Okay.
no,
Whatever.
it was
Maybe I
it
feel better
was
about it.
Basil Rathbone accidentally skewered himself in all those movies.
yeah,
You
that's right.
Errol Flynn couldn't actually kill because he's too pure for that.
Okay, so that would explain it. All right, all right.
Okay.
I
Now,
don't. I'm not sure exactly what I do, but anyway, it's
you,
yeah. It's I don't know.
you are a swash. It's a very hard word to say, swashbuckler, for me anyway. You tend to parry and swoosh and jab and whatever. Not jab so much, but you're moving that nib around a lot. And
But actually, it's funny because I think what I'm doing is I'm just writing, but adapting it in such a way that I'm able to get something out of the nib. You know what I mean? So that it's so that it has some line variation. It actually looks like something.
well,
So
one
it's
of
sort
the,
of
But
one of
the nice part is it's a unique, personalized. It's not an
definitely.
adapted, forced form. You know, like everybody else. You know, they constantly work on that forced form, up down stroke. You know, pressure at XYZ moment only,
yeah
Right.
yeah.
and
Right.
and you don't have that. You have a unique rhythm, and it's
It's very jazzy. I think it's
yeah,
very improvised. It sounds to me, jazz sounds chaotic. I don't understand music enough to appreciate it, but uh, Todd, the way you go from writing a letter in cursive and finishing it with a serif, like what the fuck are you doing? Where did that serif come from?
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
do that. And
That I do.
but
Right.
also you'll take a word that's a perfectly good word that you can put all in one line, and you'll stop it in the middle and then start over again. So there's all these sort of fun beginnings that happen in the middle of a word because it's
Although
half
that's
scripted,
actually
half script.
that's a skid. That's going so quickly around a corner that you're spinning and you're actually
Right.
off the road.
that's
And
his
so
core
Right.
bear move. Yeah,
yeah, so then you just have to get back on the road. Is what
yeah,
that is. Part of it too is, I mean, this is going to sound contradictory, but there's a real function in writing that calligraphy seems not to care about at all.
yeah.
Uh, you're trying to get an idea across. You're trying to get something out there. At the same time, calligraphy looks great. but for me, what really looks great is when people invent their own thing, whatever it
Their
is. So even if
letter,
I look at if I look at calligraphic examples, Dr. Vitolo, right?
yeah.
He's one of these, right? So he's got he always has these posts about this is Earl A. Lupfer, and his writing from he's from 18
So and so.
63 to 1929, and this sort of thing. And you're looking at and you realize, hey, these guys all have a different way of writing. Mataraz had a way of writing. They all had kind of a look that they were after. So that's on the extreme.
Normally the look though is only in the capitals. It's not in the lower cases. All the lowercase and all of those penmen are relatively similar because they have to read them. Sometimes deciphering the first letter out of the hairball, the cat's hairball, is sometimes difficult.
Oh, dear God. That's quite the image, isn't it?
The tumbleweed that blew past,
Yeah. Hey, what is this little thing in the corner of my room? Oh.
It's a capital M with extra flourish.
You're right. Look what the wind blowed in. No, but it's well, I was describing one extreme. The other extreme is just like, literally everything you do, there's no consistency at all, and then there's something in between, But even the penmen who have tremendous discipline in their work, and they develop their own style, they even in the lower case there is something that is particular to what they do, and especially the ornament. But what I've always found attractive is taking a survey of the whole thing, take it all in, and saying, oh, I like what that person does, I like what that person does. You kind of adopt little bits and pieces of different people's scripts. I do. And
I do as well. If I see a capital C, which I normally hate,
right.
a C is just a pubic hair run amok at the best of times.
That's so true.
But a C that looks like that does this, it starts out with this curve and then comes down and does that. It's not just this, or
right.
this, where you're always turning in the same direction. But if you can start a C by doing this, is really fun. And you can do that with an E. You can do that with other letters as well. One of the things, a funny way of that Neville Bedford used to describe the difference between Nicola Pang and Pierre Gustafson. We were both sitting at a table, and Nick and I are writing away, and Neville Bedford is watching us, and Nick he's doing this without touching the paper, just getting his arm to get this thing.
He's got his warm up going. Yeah.
And right. I love how both Nicola and MG Ward, they do this and then they stop and then they make their letter. And I just don't know why they don't just land the plane while they're doing that. Anyway, so anyway, Neville was watching Nick do this, and she's watching me do whatever I'm doing, and he said, watching Nick is like watching an airplane on the taxiway, just going back and forth. Pierre, he just takes off, and there's wind shear, and there's all sorts of chaos. Because I hit the ground running, and then I at some point I'll decide what letter I'm making. I'm just doing this, and then I better turn the plane to go to Seattle. We can't just sit here and do this. So I do turn things into a letter eventually, but anyway, it is. But with Todd, though, Todd is just amazing. There's almost every word, even a small word, has a bunch of thick downstrokes happening, and they don't even have to be thick downstrokes. They could be thick side strokes. Your perif, you put a perif underneath one syllable, for God's sake.
I don't know if it's quite that severe, but yeah.
Almost. I mean,
the letter A, it gets underscored. Yeah. And large.
Yeah. Anyway. So I think that you're going to really, when you meet Dr. C on Thursday night, Todd, I think you and he will connect well with wanting to write big and use a lot of ink and press down with a lot of pressure. I think you and he share that.
Oh, he'll look like Ralph then by the time he's done.
Is Ralph still doing his pens?
I guess he just started back up. He started making nibs for the new line of pens that Narwhal Companies brought out. They brought out some premium ebonite pens that are made under a different name now. They're about $1,000 a piece. So he brought out.
So he uses his 9-tined pens, or whatever they are.
They're using his Superflex nibs now.
Oh, I see.
Are these the cross-flex things?
Yeah,
are these
cross-flex?
Yeah, I just read I came across a post about just one of these pens, and it's got what do you call it? It's Urushi, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's too funny. I just literally started reading about it yesterday. That's too funny.
Yeah,
so this person dropped it and had a problem with it, by the way. So, yeah.
Pardon?
So this person had actually dropped it a couple of feet, and then cracked. Yeah, it's like, oh no.
Yeah, we read the same thing.
Yeah, yes, that's hilarious. Yeah, John Santo wrote a reply. Yeah. The world is this big.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's too funny. Well, I was going to say, there's one other thing I did want to mention, though, and I talked about this in a video I did, but the whole thing about what really got me with the writing, though, is there was a period when people just wrote. You know, they like certainly the first half of the 20th century. There's a lot of character in individual people's writing that, you know, they would learn how to write something from the teacher, and then they would just go nuts. You know, they would do their thing over time, and that I adore. You know, one of my favorite. I love Fitzgerald. You know, and his writing is phenomenal, but his handwriting was really cool. It's actually quite beautiful, and he used a very flexible nib, and he had a lot of fun with it. And not all of the examples I've seen have been great because he's a human being. But, yeah.
Even in that period as well, you can even tell that they can get characteristic even using a pencil. And you don't see that nowadays out of people using a pencil at all, but there's tons of character out of people's writing with pencil back then. Yeah. You know, in comparison to nowadays. So it's kind of nice, you know.
Again, I think it has to do with that experience with a pen that has a flexible nib too. Yes. They just understood that, hey, you know, you apply pressure here and there, and they knew when to do it. And it was intuitive, and it was all about feel, and it wasn't necessarily about what they were taught. It's just well, you do this, you know. Yeah. And I think that's really getting into the practice of how these things were actually used at the time. I like a lot. I mean, the whole thing about changing inks. Of course, you know, people are going to have their discussions about this, but I think that, you know, like, especially with a vintage pen, you know, don't bother changing inks with it. You know, find an ink you like in it and stick with it. And then if you
stick with it, yeah. If you want to have two colors, get 2 pens.
You got it. And I say it all the time. It's a beautiful excuse to buy more pens.
That's right. Yeah, like we all need an excuse, right?
You know,
I'm bringing these things for Craig Roccanova. He's bought these from me. These are pen salesman sample wallets. So with the LD Water Company, so they're really in beautiful shape. But you know, he's right now the Waterman.
Yeah, he's went kind of hog wild on that. From when he got back into pens, he just decided all of a sudden he was just
going to be a Waterman.
Waterman. Okay.
No, it was like a switch. It was so because I remember seeing it. I don't know. It was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. Where all of a sudden he say, "Hey, look what I bought." It was like, I'm like, "Who is this guy?" And he had about a dozen really decent pens that he'd bought, like, you know, in a month. And it was like,
and then it went from that, and then I'm looking at it going, he's got a Waterman checkbook pen. Now he's got a second one in Cardinal. I'm going,
what?
Where is he getting this shit from?
Right.
Well, he gets them from David Nishimura. He gets them from the Gary Lair collection. He goes into the pen show with the checkbook without the reserve.
That's right. That's right. He doesn't have the budget restriction. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's funny you mention that too, because it's like there's this whole discussion, and I mean, I think I've got to do a little thing about this too, where I mean, I've been really bumping into really hard into people who are into an area of, well, there we go, an area of pendum, right? I do this. This is my thing. Well, I do this. I do that. Well, I'm kind of like, what's so great to me? It's an aster. It's the center of a snowflake or of a wheel. It's the spoke of a wheel. It's
Uh-huh.
a universe that comes out of this basic idea that so many people can connect with.
Yeah.
That I think is phenomenal. So, like, when you say I'm all about the nib, well, yeah, you're talking about the engine, of the
Right.
pen, right? Then you've got people who are like, oh, I really don't care about the nib at all, and which is really frustrating, especially if they're,
Yes.
especially if they come right out and say I don't care about nibs, and that's the first thing out of their mouths. Okay, then I'm like, dude, we don't have a conversation.
Then I just want to take the pen away and then just jam some piece of shit stainless steel nib in it and go.
No,
Okay.
or I'll say, I tell
know?
you what I'll do.
Yeah.
I'll give you $20.
Yeah.
I'll bring all the nibs that I don't
You
want.
can have broken
Now,
one
for
or
each,
no
each
iridium.
No,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
sure.
they'll be correct nibs. They're going to be working, but I'll take out every Waterman flexible nib #2 pen out of that thing, put in a firm manifold nib. You'll be happy. It won't make any difference to
Yeah.
you, except I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to give you $20. Would you be
That's
willing
right.
to take that?
Yeah.
Exactly. And to me, if you look at a pen, I feel like everybody is missing something about every pen. They're failing to bring up something that's really cool and fascinating about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything from who used it to who made it. I mean, one thing I really like about this, I'm a musician. I make music. I love beautifully made instruments.
Mhm.
To me, a fountain pen, a good one, is kind of a cross between a musical instrument, and I mean a good one, and a fancy high performance sports car, and,
Yes.
and a vintage one with that. It's kind of a weird. It's got both of those elements that I just love. It as an object can be gorgeous, and frankly, I understand its attraction as a collectible from that standpoint. In fact, it's what got me into it in the first place. In the early '80s, I was into the 1920s and the turn of the century, and roughly that whole period. And I had magazines from the period, and the ads worked. They were hilarious. They were full of hyperbole and amazing things that they could do. And I said, why not? Let's see. Put your money where your mouth is. And I used.
Let's see. Does this work? Yes.
How is this thing, right? I'll never forget the pressureless writing ad from Parker from the 1920s about the duofold, and they had an image of the pen and in this guy's hand. God, these cameras never work the way you want them to. Anyway, so they put the pen like right here
in the web of the hand, and he's
right.
dancing,
And he's just dragging on the page. Yeah, right. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, because I mean, I had grown up only with ballpoints. It was like there's just no way you can make it.
The Feather Touch ads where they had the string holding the pen up.
Yeah.
There you go.
The Schaefer Feather Touch.
Right. So I was like, this is too cool. And when that worked, I said, this is unbelievable. And it was a Parker Duo. I had a 1928 Parker Duofold Junior in jade, which because I was like, that just looks like a great pen, and the hype is unbelievable, and it's really sexy with the little blind cap with that little,
that little
curve in it.
Yeah.
So it looks like a rumble seat, or on a car from the 20s or something. It's just charming, and it's just an elegant design. It weighed next to nothing. It was fat and chunky and comfortable, but it was compact when you put it in your pocket. I was like, this is phenomenal. I could write for hours with it, because I mean, it didn't require any pressure to make a line. I was like, this is, why did we ever stop using these? So to me, it was like, I've got a cool part of the 20s, and I can live with it and use it like a car, but it was only $20 or whatever it was that I paid for it, plus $20 to get it, serviced. There's the word.
Yeah, serviced. Just like the car. Yeah.
Just like the cars. Hey, now it runs fine.
And like the 20-year-old guy at the gay bar.
Right.
Yeah. Hubba. Good Lord.
Except he's going to cost a hell of a lot more in the long run for servicing.
You bet. But anyway, and so I think there was a point in there somewhere, but right, what you're missing.
I'm suddenly been demonetized. I'm not even monetized, but they're not going to monetize.
Yeah, right. That's
all
it.
my fault. See, that's what you get for inviting me on.
Well, when I invite a man who's naked in bed to be on a live stream, that's we're already in the gutter,
That's
and we
right.
might as well have fun.
This video is not made for kids.
No.
I love that. Anyway, but so that's kind of my thing. So it's like when people are saying, it's only about this, or I'm all about that, or I'm like, I kind of feel like saying, but there's all this other great stuff to it. That, I kind of liken it to going to a supermarket, and let's say there's a specific product you're looking for, right? And you see that they have several of them. Here's this cookie that I'm crazy about, or whatever the hell it is. Well, this one's got a little bit of a scratch on the package, but this one's immaculate. Okay, I'll get that one. Well, if you've got two, I don't know, Waterman's 55s that you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
And one has a flexible nib and the other does not. Which one are you going to buy? You know what I mean? It's the same pen, but it's not. Or maybe this one's got a more fun, this is a ripple. All right, instead of a black one. Well, the ripple one, you're like, this is just especially cool. Then you've got the issue of the condition, right? If it's immaculate, you don't want to use it. If it's really beaten up, you're like, yeah, but this one that looks a little nicer. You might want to try to find something that
immaculate ones. That's my problem. I just use anything.
Well,
that
I
usually
kind of find
pisses
myself.
a lot of people off, though.
Well, no, it's funny because I mean, I kind of get both sides. If I can find something that's user grade but it looks nice and I didn't pay a lot for it, then I'm thrilled. If it's really gorgeous and immaculate, I can't say no to it, but I really don't want to use it if it is really pristine.
Rob
So I have two that
Morrison
are-
would often show me a let's say a Parker 51 with a beautiful gold fill cap with all of the stripes that Friedrich doesn't like, but let's say it's a double jeweled whatever, and Rob will point out, he said, it's pre-dinged. Look at the ding, it's right here. So it's already blemished.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it. I can use it. It's already pre-dinged.
Yeah, that's really liberating. I mean, I've got a couple that just really do make me kind of nervous. Although, I've got a wall personal point in jade that looks like it came out, fresh off the factory. But I did dip it, so I'm like, okay, I can dip these at least. You know what I mean, or most of them.
Well,
I've got a Parker 15 that's just ridiculous. I wouldn't use that ever. The thing, and that's one of the few that I got. I got a few from David Nishimer and myself that are just unbelievable. But it was like, I've got to have one of these in my life. You know what I mean? And it was a fortune. But then I saw Osman Sumer in Ohio, and we talked a little bit about these, and he said in 1990 I paid, and it was almost twice what I paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I paid a fortune. So I'm just like, all right, there's your investment answer right there about how these things work.
And that's the volatility of the market.
Right.
Back in the day, the big pens were all the eyedroppers and that was all the money was in that because they didn't have to be repaired. And that's all anybody wanted. Nobody wanted any sacked pens. You couldn't give them away. And then the market switched in the opposite direction. All the old guys that collected all the eyedroppers, nobody wants nowadays. Nobody wants any eyedroppers. Nobody wants to pay the big money for them anymore. Nobody wants any burping early, troublesome pens. They want all the sack-filled later stuff now.
But even that's switching it back in the other direction again, but more towards the user direction. And I'm really seeing the appeal of eyedroppers for the simple fact that and I don't switch inks all the time. I keep the same ink, and I'm good about my ink maintenance and hygiene. But I've got to tell you, I have experienced a few pens in the past few years that have had quote unquote new sacks go bad in 3 years for using Waterman ink. Nothing funky, nothing weird. So there's some question in my mind and in the minds of a lot of people, really, whether or not even the same ingredients are used in the manufacture of these sacks. If there's been some change in any of the
I don't
components,
think the quality control is there from the guys at Pen Sack Company that used to be there.
It might be different because they seem to get gummy on me. The deck. Todd, this is a pen after your heart. It's a Schaefer metal section with that sort of ripple pattern. But what's nice about it says on the engraving, awarded by the L.C. Smith and Brothers Typewriter Incorporated.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
the irony of it all. The irony of it all.
Yeah,
The
right?
irony.
I love it.
This one is a smooth Waterman 0552, and it has the engraving on it is really quite lovely. See if I can show it to you here. It comes into focus.
I'll have to look at this later.
JFE 149%. Whatever that means.
Oh, that's wonderfully weird.
Isn't it weird?
That reminds me. That reminds me. I bought a laptop in, oh God, what was it? It was it was like 1995, and it was used, and it was a PowerBook 160. I still have it. Can you believe it? Anyway, it had been owned by some business guy, hardcore business guy before I owned it, and he'd named you named the hard drive, you named the computer, right?
Yeah,
and it was named Quota Buster, and I was like, this is hilarious, because I mean, I used it to make music. I mean, I used it to run a sequencer so I could make electronic music. That's what I do, and it was just, so I had to like get rid of its business bullshit, history. But I mean, it's like the 149%. It's like,
that's excellent.
Yeah, how many units did you move? But I don't know.
I have.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at this. Speaking of that. Okay, where are we? Pen and pencil set, Parker 51, Bert Bonar.
Oh, that's great.
Calcinator Quota Buster.
That's the one. Yep, that's the one. Yep, that's the one. I love that. That's hysterical. Quota Buster.
I don't know.
It's like selling the sizzle, right? And there was the whole thing of selling the sizzle for a while in the 60s. You don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. I mean, I had a record of that, by the way.
Okay.
It was hysterical. Some guy, you gotta sell the sizzle, that kind of thing. And it was just, anyway.
You got to sample. That'd be.
I did. Usually, it was very funny. But I'm just like, that's part of the. I don't know. That's part of the appeal of this too. Is it's just really funny seeing advertising hype in the 1920s. Like, you feel like it's new. You know what I mean? Like, it's, so when you see it and it's that old, you're kidding me. That's hysterical. And that's why it was so cool to see that these pens actually
work. They were actually better at then than we are now.
Yeah,
far more creative.
This is an interesting engraving. It's on a Schaefer balance pen from the 30s, right? It's the later balance. When was this pen made?
Yeah, that's post 36 with the longer radius clip.
But between 1936 and 1939, let's say.
Yeah.
Whenever this was made. Look at the engraving.
What did they have it re-engraved? All that
with the zip code. It's like the mailing label.
Oh, that's awful.
Drop this in the mail, and it'll come to me. I'll pay postage paid. Isn't it funny?
So that zip code like that came out in late 63, early 64. So they would have had to 35 years after that pen was made, went back and had somebody engrave that.
Someone's and it was Detroit Mish. It's Mish, not MI. It's Detroit Mish. So I love this. So I love the fact that someone went through the trouble of having that done.
Well, it's funny,
Yeah,
so often
two letters for the state didn't come out till what, the 90s?
Yeah. Late in life.
But it's just funny that a lot of times engravings or personalized engravings are used as used forensically, right, to try to help date the pen, which makes sense. But again, it's as reliable as relying on the nib, to date a pen, like it or not. I mean, because you could have a pen that says 1849, but it was it's a duofold or something. It's unusual, but it could happen. Certainly the later dates appear. You know, we see
I
that all
should,
the time, right? Right?
I
You
should
see all
put
those
this.
1920s gold pens that nobody could afford that suddenly have dates of 1936 on them because, oh, we finally, hey, Harry, we finally sold one of these things, you know, because it's an anniversary. It's somebody's, you know, at a corporation is celebrating the 50th anniversary of somebody's, you know, hiring or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That
send
kind
it
of
out.
thing.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Harry.
Yeah.
This vacuum fill Schaefer product was used in a pen shop to test out the heat embossing machine.
Oh,
That makes
they're
so it,
engraving. Yeah, yeah.
so this thing has the following words on it. It has Long Beach Police, Ralph Bradford, LB Police Department, Sheriff Office, Photography uh, Secretary,
It's
um,
great.
Fingerprint uh, Expert, uh, uh, Pistol Expert.
Oh my
Then it says Vacuum Fill, Crime Laboratory.
God. That's even
Uh,
better. But it's all vaguely, you know,
handwriting
weird.
handwriting analysis. Isn't it cool? So
So
That's
they
you know
they,
very
the
cool.
Long
they
Beach Police
probably were
Department.
figuring out the justification to how to line up all of them for that whole
Yeah,
Long Beach
or
Police
just
Department
to make sure it
before they.
worked, and they
Yeah.
test. This was the test, and then they'd bring out the actual Schaefer product and
Yeah.
and
That's
do it. But
hilarious.
anyway, I just think it's really fun. Uh,
By the way, I was
Carson,
very briefly. First of all, I think it's really cool that it was all law enforcement related and so specific,
yeah,
which is really weird.
yeah.
The other thing is it reminds me very much of a million years ago. I collected postcards, and I had one that I found at a bus station, an actual bus station, and it was for sale. It was just with the other cards, but it looked like most of the cards there were already were at least like 20 or 25 years old. I mean, this was the 80s, but they looked like they were from the 60s, like they had never sold, you know. And one of them had something like 10 or 12 different postcards on it. It was all overprinted, so it had these bizarre, you know, you'd see like there was
Yeah.
like somebody shooting an arrow into a bullseye, but it was like in front of a motel. You know what I mean? And then there was, you know what I mean? You saw like a billboard, and it was just this bizarre, like absolutely, it looked like a Salvador Dali on acid or something. It was just bizarre. It was very funny. Anyway,
Todd,
what is this? Oh my,
Schaefer self fillings.
there you, oh
Oh,
yeah,
there
that's
we
unreal.
go.
Yeah, here, have a pile. Here's a mini collection from my amassment.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's just tempt everybody, and then I'll
Right?
put the drawer away. Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And by the way, here's an observation about early Schaefers that it's interesting. You were talking about feeds earlier. There, I think of the major companies that their feeds, frankly, were probably the least sophisticated. I have yet. They're okay, but it's interesting. I found a number that go from being like kind of dry to being a little blobby. They're not like super amazing. The Waterman's feed, the spoon feed, I love. Although I've heard at least one person say I think that they're like too wet. They can be really wet. I've got one that's super wet. I think they handle ink very well though, very reliably.
I think the only time they can be too wet, perhaps, is if you got maybe a firm, really firm, really super extra fine Waterman that's not going to flex on you. Then
Or it's
they
100
flood up.
degrees.
Yeah.
Or it's 100
Yeah.
degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I did have. There's one pen I've got. It's a 50, an early Waterman's 55 with an oblique italic, slightly flexible nib, which is unbelievably great. I mean, it's so much fun to write with. It's incredible, and it is wet. But I'll tell you, yeah, I was writing with it during the summertime in my apartment with no air conditioning, and I was like, this isn't working.
Yeah. Might as well just put it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
Well,
what paper you're going to play with that day.
Right.
I have to speak, Carson. You have to send me an email. I don't get the emails you send me. So send me an email, Pierre Gustav. I'll write it down because he says he sends me things, but they never come. So PIER GUSTAFSON studio UDIO at Gmail. So copy that down and send me an email because I don't get them. You say you send them and they never show up. I'm trying to find a particular.
Well, a lot of people too forget that in the early days, well, up until a fairly significant portion of time, Schaefer didn't make most of their own nibs. It wasn't until they bought out two of the Chicago nib companies and incorporated them to their own factory that they started producing their own nibs, which pretty much then at that point ended, for the most part, any flexibility in the Schaefer nibs.
Although, of course, the big thing with that was just competing on the basis of warranties.
Yeah,
that was really the big thing. It was like, hey, I know what we'll do. We'll have a lifetime warranty. Yeah, that's it. Hey, let's make a nib that you can't ruin ever. So they did. That's part of the but that's part of the appeal of them for me too. Is or early Schaefer specifically, because it's just like quick, name a company that's known for having like the toughest nail nibs on the planet ever, at least historically. It's definitely Schaefer, without a doubt. You could, doubles as a hammer,
Yeah, that's it. Schaefer. Yeah.
But their early ones often have flexible nibs, which is just like, it just messes with your head. So to have something where there's that, there's also the fact that Walter Schaefer was a jeweler, but Schaefer made some of the simplest, plainest pens ever made of the major manufacturers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. They're almost always devoid of ornament. So when you find one that has any ornamentation, it's kind of shocking. And the other thing is that they were known for their innovation, oftentimes to their detriment. To the point of becoming an Achilles heel. So now you've got the touchdown and all these really interesting mechanisms that
they're like the Germans,
right?
Overcomplicate everything. Yeah,
right. And then people don't want to work on them because they're just a giant pain in the ass. So to have an early Schaefer, that's
Todd.
Yes.
Schaefer, gold fill set, really skinny. Do you have this one with a number 1 nib?
Oh, that's crazy. No, I do not. That is neat.
Isn't that fun?
Very fun. Well, and that's the thing is, to find, like Roger Wooten had, I don't know if you know him or have seen any of his pens, but he was at the Ohio show. Yeah, great guy. And he had this case just filled with like early modeled Schaefers. And it was just stunning because first, you never see them. It's very hard to find them, and they have their own kind of distinctive look. Actually Chilton kind of had that look, and so did who else had the actually Parker of all people had that look in their model pens. That sort of diagonal.
New Point kind of looked like them. Some of the New Point models look like Schaefer too.
Yeah, and I've got a question about them if I remember it, but so it's just to have that really, like their clip looks super modern. The Schaefer clip that they came out with early on, that looks like a clip you would see now. There's nothing old-fashioned looking about that at all. That looks totally modern. And it's got the crimps and everything. And just that whole look, it's very clean. It's really elegant. It looks, their early pens even look pretty modern. But to see that it's got this really primitive feed that looks like a little black piece of spaghetti.
This one?
There's nothing to it. It's just a hoot. You know what I mean? or a pretty old-fashioned looking section, which is actually pretty ergonomic. So it's the concave thing going on. Oh, there we go. A question before I forget. New Point. Do you know anything about them? Because there's somebody in my group, and Pierre, I wish you would participate in my little group because it's perfect and you'd be a wonderful idea.
I have a few New Points. Yeah. They're out of. They were out of Minnesota.
Is this okay? Which group is this? The
Vintage Flex fountain pens. It's
okay. I'll join and be more of a participant.
It'd be nice to have you, just because it's so much your thing, and
it is my thing. I had to admit
on
that
group. I just haven't signed in for forever and a day, so I apologize.
I had a post. So I had a post I don't know, a week or two ago where I had one of these little reminders that said, "Hey, thank your people, your people, but thank the top contributors in your group." I'm like, okay, sure, I should do that. And so I looked at it and it said, like, I was one of them, and then another one was somebody else who always posts, and they're kind of like borderline ads or something. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, what's happening here? Because you know what I mean? Like, do I really have to get people? Hello, post something. There are over 2,000 people in my group. Okay. And for whatever reason, it had just in the past, I don't know, however long, it just seemed like nobody was doing things like, hey, come on, show us your stuff. All of a sudden I got this flurry of really great posts,
I mean,
which is nice. So, anyway.
Well, in the beginning, we were going pretty good there, and then I just got off into the toolies,
Well, yeah, and it's funny because as I said, I just kind of feel like I really see the value and the interest in so much of any given pen, and to me, it's just it's a list of boxes that you check off. Does it have this? Does it have that? Does like there's I will admit I'm about U.S. top tier pens pretty much from the 20s and earlier. That's my thing, and I will break a rule occasionally. I have a really soft spot for Dorics. Because they're amazing looking, but that's a great example of a pen where it's like that's got a bunch of boxes that I want checked off. It's does it have the ink shut-off valve? Does it have the second cap band with the
Does it
diamonds
have
in it?
the AM/FM clock radio?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Does it have what do they call it? Does it have the Landau top?
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, it's just got a bunch of these. Oh yeah, the adjustable nib, and the thing is, they made two different kinds of adjustable nibs, right? They had the later one that's just one solid piece,
right,
for the adjuster, and then the earlier one that's open. Well, I wanted the earlier one, with the so it's like I had all of these little things that I wanted in this pen. I was like, it was all there. Like, that's it, I'm buying it. Is it in perfect condition? Yes. Oh well, I'm not going to be able to use it, but at least I've got one of these.
But you got what you wanted. Yeah.
But I got the one I wanted. You know what I mean? So, but I just feel like they're all a bunch of those things. And if you can get as many of those boxes ticked, and it has a good flexible nib, there you go. And that's the thing is too. Like, there's this argument like, who's going to want a Waterman's 20 with a flexible nib? Nobody cares. I'm like, you know what? I actually would, for the same reason that a good furniture maker will finish the underside and the back of the drawer and that sort of thing. You're never going to see it, but
if I'm going to pay the money that he charged for a Waterman 20, that fucker better have a flexible nib in
it. or if given a choice between one that does and one that does not, which one would you buy? Everything else being equal. Let's say they both had the same price. Well, wouldn't you get the one with the flexible nib? I mean,
yes,
right. So it's like, that's just, even from that standpoint. Now the opposite is also true, right? Where now this pen looks like crap, and in fact it's a warranted nib. We don't know where it came from. We know nothing about it, but that's a hell of a nice nib. That works really well, and it works really nicely with that feed. Well, buy it. It's a great pen.
Did you see Rob Morrison posted a more smooth?
Oh, right.
He needed a cap for it. Well, I had to, of course, show him that I had a complete one.
Oh, that's mean. That's mean.
Yeah, I love the engraving. Edith Willingham from Frank, Xmas 1916. So, isn't it? And
I had a nice little surprise, by the way. Oh, go on.
It has a very stub nib on it, flexible stub on top of this.
Those are endlessly fun. I feel like that's a flexible stub is like a turbo to me, where you've got an already speedy car that's got a lot of power and it's got a turbo.
Yeah.
The thing I don't like about stub nibs, and even about big ball nibs like this one has, you have to hold it exactly so both halves of the sphere or both ends of the tine have to be flat on the ground. You can't lift any of them up. Normally a pen you can sort of rotate a little bit and they'll still write.
Although some are surprisingly forgiving, like that Waterman's 55 I mentioned earlier. That has a what do you call it? A cursive. It's sort of like a cursive italic, which is great. So it's it has line variation, obviously, when you're using it, but you don't have to be too worried about how you're holding it. I mean, it's pretty forgiving, but some of them are. And I know what you mean. Some are not, obviously. If it's a seriously sharp italic,
some of them,
that's not gonna.
No.
Yeah.
But usually the Waterman ones, a lot of the safety pens have a lot of really nice cursive italic nibs in them.
Nice.
That people never wanted those because nobody'd repair those before. That's what Nathan and I used to repair safety pens all the time. I don't anymore. Langdon in Canada repairing them for a while, but nobody wants to pay the money that it costs to rebuild them. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, $50 to rebuild a safety pin. It's like, by the time you're done with all the quirks and seals and all that, what do you think it costs? People,
I hate to admit, I've gotten a little bit zen about that. Like, I've bought a handful of, fortunately, only a few, but I have maybe 4 pens that have cracked nibs, which is heartbreaking.
It is.
But unless they're really severe cracks, I mean, it's just what you think they are. They're small cracks from the breather hole, pretty much. There's one that I bought fairly recently that has a very small crack on the side that I'm gonna have to get fixed. But it's worth getting fixed. I think it's worth it if you have a few of them, even if you're technically underwater, but you're enjoying it. And it just seems a shame to have the thing go to waste or for the nib to completely just break down the road. Why not blow the money and say, just be careful next time or more careful when you look at that nib.
Yeah.
Or if you get a killer deal, like the last thing that I bought, it wasn't really. Let's put it this way: if I get the nib repaired, I could still probably make $100, even getting that crack laser welded. I would probably still be able to make $100 on it. I think it's just such a pain in the neck for people to deal with it. There's only one person doing it.
Yeah, and he just tripled his starting price now on nib repair.
I'm sure. Yeah, because we used to be the FP Nibs guy in Spain. Used to do it apparently, but he doesn't do it anymore. And I think there was somebody else. So it's like there's only one person doing it.
So we're back to the one pain in the ass grouch in California. Yeah.
Right. Who I'm gonna bite my tongue and just be like, yes, sir, I agree with you.
Yeah, please.
While not appearing to be obsequious and rather genuinely respecting, because you have to be, while respecting the incredible thing that he does, because nobody does do it, and there's a reason. I mean, I was talking to some people who know exactly what they're doing, who've been looking into this for years, and have shown them to jewelers and crack nibs and nibs to jewelers, and I did it myself. I found somebody who seemed to really. I called a bunch of people, and they all seemed to think that. Well, let's put it this way: one of them didn't believe me that it was a 14 karat gold nib and felt compelled to test it. I was like, already we have a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
let's stop right there. Yeah.
Right. This isn't going to work. And the reality is that anybody who tries to make these, what happens to the nib is nothing short of it vaporizes completely. It goes poof. It doesn't just melt. It's just because it turns out the nibs are really thin and
just explodes.
Yeah, it's air. It's vaporized. So anybody who has that skill, because what's happening is you've got that solder and it transfers the heat to the nib. So that's a nightmare. So whoever's doing this, right, this certain person is getting it to the right temperature, holding it for the right amount of time, and knows when to stop and when to pull, and all of this stuff, and that's unbelievable. So yeah, like it or not, you've got to respect the hell out of that. And I have to admit I do. So
there was, or at one time, there was one guy in Japan doing it, and there's a newer company doing it in Korea, that Eureka Pens, that also brought out those new pens that are made out of that peak.
Oh, right.
Peak material, but they're repairing nibs, laser welding, and retipping and all that. But
that's great.
You gotta mail your shit to South Korea. Supposedly a lot of the Indian companies that make gold nibs too will fix your gold nib too. But I don't want to be mailing gold nibs to India either. You know, I don't.
Yeah, especially
know
if it's
really.
yeah, especially if it's a Waterman's Pink or something. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah, exactly.
you know, right.
I have to go, folks. I need to get my act together, but it was really fun seeing both of you here again.
Yes, it was wonderful.
And
Yeah.
Todd, I will join your or say something in your flexible nib pen group. And
That'd be lovely.
And Friedrich, just a quick note: how's your father doing?
He's hanging in there. He's hanging in
Okay.
there,
Oh,
which
good.
is good enough by my book. You know,
Okay.
we
Well,
can keep that up, the better. You know.
good. Good.
Good.
Very good. See you later.
Excellent. Take care,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Good to
Bye.
see you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Have I stopped the live stream? I can't tell. Oh, I guess I did.